Hi, and welcome to Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy, and I'm coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, April 11th, 2025. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoy this episode. This is a channel all about my crafty life, and today I have crocheting and knitting to share with you all. I will have links to the places that you can find me in the description box below, as well as the show notes for this episode. I have a few finished objects to share with you all today. The first one I shared on my last episode as pretty much a finished object. I just really needed to block it. It is the vintage Chevron blanket crochet version, a free pattern by Purl Soho. And I crocheted this using a bundle that was sent to me as a gift from Purl Soho. And the only thing that I needed to do was make a Ravelry page for this project and share my finished object on there. Because the reason why I originally was interested in making this blanket, or came to get a bundle for this blanket, I guess I should say, is because I was interested in trying out this pattern. But when I went onto the Ravelry site, there were no examples of the pattern crocheted up, only a small swatch. So I contacted them and asked if, well, I offered to crochet a sample for them to have as, you know, an example for others to be able to see what this blanket looks like crocheted up. And they were willing to send me a bundle of yarn, including 10 skeins of their Till yarn, which is an Aran weight 100% Andean Highland wool yarn. And it included all of these beautiful colors. It's in the ruby colorway. That this kit is called the ruby colorway. And anyway, they said that they would send me a bundle of yarn so that I could crochet this up, but I could keep the blanket and just post a picture to Ravelry. So that's what I did. It's not a huge size, it's just the smallest size. The crochet version comes with 3 sizes, and this is the smallest of the sizes available. Again, it's called the crib size. The knitted version, I believe, only comes in 2 sizes. But this requires you to have 1 bundle of yarn, and then I believe for the middle size of the crochet version, you'd need 2 bundles, and the largest size, you would need 3 bundles. I do have quite a bit of leftover yarn from this bundle of yarn, however. It used a little more than half of each color. So I have quite a bit of yarn left over, which is great. This is crocheted. I started down here with this orange color. I could go through all these colors. I do have it written down here. This orange is called Autumn Leaf, Berry Pie, Pink Moon, Fresh Grapefruit, Peach Basket, Rose Hip Red, Alpine Rose, Lilac Mauve, Pink Tulip, and Giant Sequoia. They're all so beautiful, and I just love how they go together. Anyway, this pattern is crocheted. You cast on the number of stitches, and it's crocheted in these chevron zigzag patterns using single crochet stitches, American terms, working into the back loop only, all the way across. And it's a very simple pattern. I did count along the way as I was crocheting to keep track of my stitches so that I would know when to do my increase stitch at the top of the peak and a decrease stitch at the bottom of the peak, or at the bottom of the valley. I started this on March 1st and finished it on March 28th. I used a 5.5 millimeter hook, and it really did make a difference to give it a good block so that it would lay flat. It still, I think, is not a perfectly flat. I don't know. It's pretty good. But if you look at the sides, they don't lay perfectly if I'm being really picky. But, you know, it's pretty good. maybe you can kind of see this side is rolling towards you and this side is rolling away. Just a little tiny bit, but blocking really did make a big difference. And I even pinned it out, which I don't usually do with blankets, but I did with this one, and I'm happy that it is laying nice and flat now. I think it's just a beautiful classic. Obviously it's vintage. It's called the vintage crochet or vintage chevron blanket because it is just a classic chevron design, and I really love how it turned out. So that was a fun project to work on. I also finished another baby blanket. And this is another project from my personal Make 9 board. And I just love how this one turned out too. Isn't it so fun? I think it's great. So I made this blanket using a pattern from a book that I have. And again, I forgot to grab it off my bookshelf here, but it is the Crochet Kaleidoscope book by Sandra Ng. I made motif number 77 from this book using DK weight yarn. I started this way back in July of last year, and then I put it on hold for several months and picked it back up, oh, I don't know, at the beginning of the year sometime, and have been working on it for a while now again. I used a total of 9 different colors. 5 of them are Deramores Deramores Studio Anti-Pilling DK in 5 colorways. The main color that I use for all of the borders is called Powder. The lime green here is called Lime. The dark green is called Olive. This darker pink is called Blush. And then there's a light pink, which you can barely even tell. Oh no, that's not it. Oh, right here. In the center of this one, there's a light pink. And that is called Rose. So those are the 5 colors of that line of yarn. And then the other line of yarn that I put in here is Knit Picks Brava. It was labeled sport weight, but I'm pretty sure it was mislabeled, and it was actually a DK weight yarn. I had 4 colorways of that. So I've got this turquoise color, which is called Cornflower. And then the more green color here is called Tranquil. This purpley color is called Lady Slippers. And I'm sorry, Lady Slipper. And then the orange color is called Seashell. I made all of my motifs different, so I kept track of them and made sure that they were all in a different order, a different combination of colors, which was super fun to work up all of the different color combinations. I used the main color for the 3rd and final rounds of this motif. There are a total of 6 rounds in each motif. I made a total of 61 motifs for this blanket, so I kept it in the hexagon shape and made it so that I thought it was a pretty good baby blanket size. It has 5 hexagons along all of the 6 edges. I sewed all of the hexagons together using a mattress stitch, and that went well. That was pretty easy and really quite enjoyable to sew them together. It worked really well. I usually like to crochet when I'm doing a piece like this, I like to crochet my pieces together as I go along. But I tried doing that with these motifs, and it just didn't look very neat when I tried it that way. So I found that sewing them together just made a neater finish, and I really am happy with how that worked out. When I was all done, I added a border of 2 rounds of single crochet stitches and just continued with the basic pattern. I skipped a couple of stitches in the valleys, so similar to the vintage chevron blanket, skipped a couple of stitches in the valleys to decrease, and then I did the corners as the hexagons are done on the last round. I just followed that same pattern for the corners. Anyway, it worked out well. I was happy with the edging because it matches the width of the main color in between each of the motifs. So I really liked how that worked, so that the border around each of the motifs is matching in width. Anyway, I really like how that looks. And I just gave it a steam block using my iron. All of these yarns are 100% acrylic, so this will be an easy one to take care of. For some reason, I started this on July 18th of last year, 2024, and I finished it on April 4th. I used a G 4mm hook for this project. And let's see, I want to make sure I didn't forget any other. I did make one little tiny change to the motif on the 5th round. That calls for you to do a single crochet into the back loop only for most of the stitches on that round. And I only did it on each little side of the hexagon, I only went into the back loop for one of those stitches. It's probably not important to tell you that, but I just made a tiny little modification of that. And then also the original pattern calls for you to use an adjustable ring to start your hexagon. And whenever I have a crochet pattern that calls for a magic ring or an adjustable ring, I just use a chain 1 stitch and crochet into that chain 1 stitch. I find that it's more secure. Anyway, after I got all done with this blanket, I realized, well, after I had it all laid out, I was laying out all of my pieces, my motifs, to try to get them to be as randomly placed as possible. And I had 6 extra hexagons that I didn't need. I don't know how I miscalculated that. So I actually ended up making 67 motifs. And so I decided to put those together into this little coaster or doily type thing. So I made one more hexagon in just plain in the powder colorway for the center of this, and then stitched these together in the same way, added the border in the same way as I did for the big blanket. So I will use this probably under a plant in our house somewhere. So that's kind of a fun little surprise finished object as well. So those are my 2 blankets that I was able to finish, and I'm very happy with both of them. And then I also finished another classic ribbed hat, which is another free pattern by Purl Soho. This one is designed by Jake Canton for Purl Soho. And I have just been making these hats on repeat lately. This is, I should keep a count of how many I have made. I can't remember how many I have made, but this is another hat that I made using the leftovers from a blanket that I finished several weeks ago, using some Lion Brand Mandala yarn in the Warlock colorway. So I was working on this last time and finished it. I make the adult small size for this pattern. I did go down in my needle size when I made this one, however. I went down to a US 2.75 millimeter set of needles for this one because I had found that with my other ones, the gauge was turning out a bit too loose for my taste. So I went down to a US 2.75 millimeter set of needles to get a bit of a tighter gauge, but still made the adult small size. Oh, and I knit the length of these hats to 9.5 inches before I do the decreases, which is an adjustment from the original pattern. So I am lengthening the hats from the original pattern. And I just like having a little extra room to have more of a brim to fold up. The decreases are easy and fun. And I started this one on March 28th and finished it on April 6th. And even though I went down in my needle size, it's still plenty roomy. My head is pretty average. I believe it's 22 inches in circumference. And it fits my head nicely because of the rib. It really just adjusts to different head sizes, but there's still plenty of room in this if somebody had a larger head. So I'm planning on adding this to I kind of have a group of gifts that are more for donation, and then a group of gifts that I like to keep as gifts to give to people whenever. And I'll probably add this one to the donation pile since it's made out of 100% acrylic yarn. It would just be another one that would be super easy to care for. So I'm happy to have that one done as well. And you may have expected that I have another one on the go. I have just enough of leftovers of DK weight yarn from the Lion brand Mandala yarn, and then a few other little scraps of yarn from my stash to make another Scrappy DK weight hat. So I've just started another one using the US 2.75 millimeter needles again. And I don't even know what this yarn is, but there's just this tiny little scrap of yarn. In fact, this is 2 different little scraps of this one. I've already joined in another little piece. And then I have quite a bit of the Lion brand Mandala in the brownie colorway that I had left over from that blanket as well. And this is the rest of the Warlock colorway. And then I did just grab a little bit extra from some of the leftovers from the baby blanket I just shared. So this is the Deramores Studio anti-pilling color or yarn from that blanket that I just shared. So anyway, that'll be enough to make another hat for donation probably. I started this one on probably the 6th when I finished the last one. Yes, April 6th. I have an update on one of my Scrappy blankets to share with you that I haven't shared in a while. I'm just holding this in this cute little basket because I'm working through a big ball of yarn. Well, it's not quite as big anymore. It was huge, but now it's gotten down to this size. And I have balled up here just scraps of DK and worsted weight yarns. They're primarily wool blends of yarns. There's some cotton in here as well. But again, it's just little scraps of leftovers. The majority of this yarn I had crocheted into another Scrappy blanket, and I realized I didn't care for that blanket because there were too many big holes in it and I just did not like it. So I ripped it out and started this blanket quite a while ago. Let me see if I can find my project page for this one. It is I am making the Rainbow Ripple baby blanket, but just adjusting it to be a larger size instead of a baby blanket size. So I started this one back in September of last year. I am using I started off this blanket using a 3.5 millimeter hook, but I realized that was too tight, and so now I've gone up to a 4 millimeter hook. And this is a free pattern by Celeste Young. I have made this pattern so many times, both in baby blanket patterns, and I have another Scrappy version of this blanket in Christmassy colors. I've made this pattern into dishcloths using fingering weight cotton yarn, and I love them. I use them every day. And anyway, I just love this pattern so much. So here is how this one is looking. I just love it. I think it's so great. This pattern is super simple in my opinion, and it's so much fun to work on. It's just a 3-row repeat, and there's just one little tiny adjustment for the 3rd row. The 3rd row is a little bit different than the first 2 rows or rounds, but it's very simple. There is a progress keeper that was gifted to me by Tracy of Grizzly Knits, and I just love it. I think it's so beautiful. That's marking where I was the last time I shared this on an episode, but I have no idea how long ago that was. It was probably a very long time ago. But I've been able to add several rounds to this blanket, and it is getting pretty big. It's not enormous yet, and I have a ton of more scraps of yarn to add into this, so I will just continue to work on it, and I'm enjoying it so much. I love it. I think it's so cool. This basket's way too small for it, but it just works to have the ball in this little basket. Okay, another update on a work in progress has gone back to a basket. I had it in a project bag last time I shared it with you because it was kind of at an easy stage, but now it's gone back into a basket. It is the Saga cardigan, which is a free pattern that was published by Yarbo, and it's designed by Venkia Ruwal. I've made a little bit of progress on this, but not a ton. I have finished the body and bound off. So last time I recorded, I was just working on the 1x1 ribbing at the bottom of this cardigan. So I finished off that ribbing, did an Italian sewn bind off, and I have put this first sleeve on hold. Last time I shared with you, I had worked a few inches in just this dark charcoal color, just in plain stockinette on the sleeve, and I didn't like the looks of that, so I ripped that back and have now started on the second sleeve, and I'm gonna get it to the same point as the first sleeve, and then hopefully work through my scraps of yarn that I'm using to make this cardigan with to see if I can get the majority of the sleeves worked up in the Colorwork motifs before I add the ribbing. We'll see how it goes. So I'm using, like I said, scraps of sport weight yarn. The main color, the dark charcoal, is Minerva Columbia. No, I always get that mixed up. It's Columbia Minerva in the Skylark line. It is 50% nylon and 50% virgin wool, and this color is called charcoal. I got this in a swap that my local library held a few years ago. And I'm also using that same yarn in the dark Oxford colorway for one of the colors. And then the other three colors are all Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Sport Weight, which is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. The green is called Pampas Heather, the pink is Blossom Heather, and the white is just called White. This sweater or cardigan is knit from the top down. There are steek stitches added to the front, so I could cut that open at any point now. I will sew some reinforcement stitches on each side of the steek edges and then cut open the front and then add the ribbing. I have modified this pattern quite a bit. I started off making the medium size, but I split for sleeves a little sooner than what the medium size calls for, so my stitch count is in between the small and medium size. I'm changing some of the motifs. I'm adding more colors than what the recommended pattern calls for, because like I said, I'm using scraps, so I'm adding in more colors than what is called for. I'm not doing any decreases on the sleeves, I'm just knitting them straight. I cropped it quite a bit. I can't remember if there's any other modifications that I've made, but I'm kind of just trying it on as I go and doing my own thing. I did just give it a really good block and tried it on, and I'm really happy with how it's fitting. It's not oversized, but it's fitting comfortably, so I'm pretty happy with that. I started this January 11th, so it's been a work in progress for a while, but I'm getting, you know, I can see the end in sight now with just the two sleeves left and the ribbing to add on. I'm doing the ribbing using US 2.5 3mm needles, and the rest of the body of the cardigan is knit using US 6 4mm needles. I think that covers the majority of it. So, oh, you can see the progress keeper there on the ribbing. So I only had to add a couple of inches of ribbing before I was done with that. And then I've just done a couple of Colorwork motifs on this second sleeve since I recorded last. So this hasn't gotten a ton of attention lately, but you'll see why, because I cast on a bunch of new things. Okay, so I cast on, last Saturday, I cast on 3 new projects all the same day. I was just in a cast on mood, I guess. The first project is being held in this beautiful bag that I received in a swap several years ago. I love it so much, it's so beautiful. And in here is another project from my Make 9 board. It is the Stansbury shawl by Emily Clausen of Salt City Knits. And I'm so excited to be working on this project. So I test knitted this pattern for Emily when she first, when it was going through the test knitting process. And I loved it so much, but I did not keep that shawl for myself. I ended up gifting it to my cousin. So I really wanted to have this shawl for my own. And I just am loving it so much. This colorway that I'm using is so stunning. I love it so much. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love it so much. I received this yarn as a gift from Kayla Litton of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast. It was dyed by Stitchin' with Yarn. And it is a sock set called the Magic Potion sock set. It's on the twist sock base, which is 80% superwash merino wool, 20% nylon. It came with a 100-gram main skein in this gorgeous colorway. And then the Stansbury shawl is designed to be made using a sock set with a full 100-gram skein along with a 20-gram mini. But this sock set actually came with 2 20-gram minis in these 2 beautiful colors. And so I kicked them both up because I wasn't 100% sure which colorway I would go with for the contrast lace mesh section that I will be adding very soon to this project. But I think I'm gonna go with the brighter pink pop. I think that will just really look great. The purple matches, it just doesn't set it off enough, I don't think. But I'll definitely use that for something else because I love purple, but I think this bright pink color will be the better choice for this shawl. I only have 1 more row to add to this before I'm ready to add the lace mesh section, so I'm super excited about that. The majority of this shawl though is just knit in plain stockinette, so it's super easy. Then there's these sections every once in a while of a garter stitch row to kind of give it a little bit of interest. It's on a bit of a small needle right now, so I can't stretch it out completely, but anyway, it's been super fun and easy and mindless to work on this. I'm using the recommended needles, US 6 4mm needles for this project as well. So there will be, like I said, a lace mesh section using that contrast color next, and then there's a lace applied border where you like knit it the opposite way. Instead of going across this way, you're just knitting short rows and adding on the lace border using the main color again at the end. So I am very excited about this project. I'm enjoying it so much. Like I said, I started that on April 5th. I also started my April Colorwork Cuff Club socks on April 5th. And the April Colorwork chart, this is a design by Summer Lee. The April chart had these fun rain clouds on them. So I have cast on 60 stitches using US 0 2mm needles and did 12 rounds of 2x1 ribbing. And then I increased my stitch count to 72 stitches. I increased my needle size to 3mm needles, and I worked the Colorwork chart just 1 sock at a time on 9-inch circulars. I decided to add in some mohair to the clouds to make them fluffier. I don't know if you can really see, but kind of, you might be able to see that they're a little bit fluffy. I thought that would be a fun addition. I think it is a very sweet little pattern for April showers. The main color that I'm using was a gift that I received from Emma Potter of Potter and Bloom in a swap that we did a couple of years ago. This is Life in the Long Grass Dye Studio. Their fine sock base, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon in the Crush colorway. And then I just used some bare yarn for the clouds, both fingering weight, 75-25, along with the silk lace weight mohair bare yarn. And then for the raindrops, it was kind of unplanned, but I realized later that I also received that in a swap from Anna Knitter. So both the purpley yarn, the main color, and the blue yarn were from Christmas Advent swaps that I did with other knitting friends overseas. And I just think that's fun that I'm using both of these colorways in these socks. So that blue yarn is by Anna Knitter. She dyed that herself. It did not have a colorway name though. And I have finished the colorwork chart now, and have put them back onto the magic loop method, knitting them 2 at a time. I've reduced my stitches back down to 60 stitches, and these needles again are US 2mm needles. So I do all of that adjustment of my stitches and needle sizes so that I can get a really loose gauge for the colorwork section, so that I don't have a hard time fitting that colorwork section over my high instep. I'm going to probably make these shorty, or more of a shorty sock again. I'm just going to follow the pattern. So Summerly recommends that after the colorwork chart, you knit 7 rounds in plain stockinette before you do the heel. So I think I'm going to do that. So they won't be very tall. They'll be a shorter sock, which I did for March's Colorwork Cuff Club as well. And I think that will be fun to have these shorter to, wear throughout the warmer months more so. I think they're super fun. So the rest of these socks will be pretty simple. The original pattern calls for you to, after the colorwork chart, I'm not sure exactly when, but she recommends that she has in her sample, the remainder of her sock, the foot of her sock, is knit using stripes. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to continue with this main color for the rest of my socks. Oh, and this bag I sewed myself. The last work in progress that I have to share with you is another project from my Make 9 board, and I'm very excited about this project. It's so much fun. This is another baby blanket that I'm making. If you can't tell, baby blankets are one of my favorite things to make. I especially like girly ones, ones with really girly colors. So this is another one of those. I do probably need to make some more boy blankets, but anyway, this is a free pattern that I have made before. I found a YouTube tutorial by Jana Martinez, and it is called How to Crochet a Beautiful Shells Blanket in One Color. I'm obviously not doing mine in one color, and I think she probably has a tutorial showing you how to do this blanket in 2 colors as well. But this is just the tutorial that I stumbled upon several years ago when I made this blanket before. And I just went back to that same tutorial to remind myself how to make this stitch. It is so enjoyable, and I think it's so beautiful. It's pretty simple. You do have to do a bit of counting to count the number of stitches for the shells, but it's not hard at all. It's so enjoyable. I love it so much. I am using 3 different skeins of yarn for this project. They're all worsted weight, 100% acrylic yarns. I'm pretty sure that I have 2 different pink colorways. They're very similar, but they're not a perfect match. I'm sorry, my chair is super squeaky, isn't it? I need to like oil it or something. Anyway, I have these 2 pink yarns, and you can barely tell that they're different, but I believe neither of them are labeled. I don't remember where I got them from. I might have been sent them by a viewer, but I can't remember. Anyway, I'm pretty confident that they are both Super Saver, Red Heart Super Saver yarn. And if I had to guess, I kind of think that this one is called Baby Pink, and maybe this one's called Soft Pink, but it's been I don't know. I'm just going off my memory for that. Anyway, so I am using both of those, and then I'm also using a cake of Lion Brand Mandala ombre yarn in the Tranquil colorway. This was gifted to me by a friend of mine. And I have been doing, well, the pattern is a 2-round repeat. So I have more of the pink colors than the Mandala yarn. So I am doing 4 rounds in one pink, 2 rounds in the Mandala, and then 4 rounds in the second pink. And I'm alternating that, and then 2 more rounds in the Mandala. So again, you can barely tell the difference between the 2 pinks, but if you look closely, you can kind of see the difference between the brighter pink and the other one's just a bit lighter than the other, one is a little lighter than the other. I think it's so beautiful. So I'm just going to keep going until I run out of yarn, and hopefully it will be big enough. If it's not big enough, I can always add more to it with a different color or something. I'll make it work. I'm using an H 5mm hook for this project, and again, I started this one on April 5th as well. So I'm really excited that I've been able to continue working through my Make 9 board and finished a few things and have a few more projects on the go, so that's very exciting. I last episode announced some prize winners for the Make 9 make-along that I am hosting on Instagram. And one of the winners was Rosalba, and she contacted me with her address so I could send her her prize, and then she said that she had some yarn that she was wondering if I would be interested in receiving. And I was, because I think it will work for another one of my Make 9 projects that I'd like to make. She sent me 6 skeins of this beautiful yarn. It's by Spoon Fibers, and it is a 90% cotton, 10% cashmere. It is like a fingering to sport weight, probably 50 grams for 175 yards, and the colorway is called Lilac. And again, she sent me 6 of these, which is so sweet of her. I just love them. The color is gorgeous. I love purple so much, and this is just the perfect color. In fact, I was looking at purchasing some yarn to make this pattern, and now I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to put it on the screen. This is the pattern that I'm planning on making with this yarn. And this pattern was gifted to me by the designer, Asia. And so I am excited to get started on that summer top as well. And hopefully it will be enough yarn. I don't know, it might be a little bit more cropped than what the original pattern shows, but I think I can make it work. She also sent me a couple of other little goodies, which are so sweet. She sent me these fun socks. It's called The Girls. The brand is called The Girls, and then this is the Knitting Girl. Isn't that cute? I beat up my left hand this morning. I got a sliver in this finger, and it's underneath my nail. Doesn't that look horrible? It's very painful, and I can't get it out. And then I cut myself when I was cutting bread as well this morning. Beat up my left hand. And does anybody else think this? As soon as I hurt myself, my first thought is that going to be okay when I'm knitting and crocheting? My yarn does wrap right over the Band-Aid, but it's not hurting it. It's not a very bad cut. But anyway, those are really fun. So thank you for those, Rosalba. And then she sent me these super sweet needle stoppers, pink hearts. Aren't they cute? I love them so much. So sweet. Thank you so much, Rosalba. I just love those gifts. And I really want to get started on this shirt, but I feel like maybe I need to finish a few things before I cast on another project or start a new project. But anyway, I think that's everything I have to share with you all today. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the things that I've been working on, and I hope that you're really enjoying the things that you're working on as well. I completely forgot about 2 different things that I wanted to share on this episode. So it's a bit later now, and I'm just realizing that I forgot to mention a couple of things. So I want to add that in here at the end. I had some very quick projects that I made and finished and already gifted since I recorded last. I gifted a cardigan and bonnet set to our niece who has a 6-month-old little girl, and I wanted to gift her something. So I made this Portobello children's cardigan, which is a free pattern by Vita Apala. It is a crocheted pattern. I used some yarn that was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel called Sprightly Yarns Cotton Worsted in the Dusty Pink colorway. I used a 3.75 millimeter hook. I started this project on April 2nd and finished it on April 4th, so it was super quick. I made the 6 to 9 month size, and I absolutely loved making this cardigan. I love how it turned out. I did make some modifications. I only crocheted rows 1 and 2 for the front button band edging because I liked how that looked. It calls for you to then do some front and back post crochet stitches, but then I had a hard time fitting the buttons that I wanted to use through the buttonholes that were recommended. It called for you to make buttonholes, and they were turning out too large for those little buttons that I wanted to put on it. And I found that if I just did the first 2 rows, which called for, I can't remember now if it was half double crochet or double crochet stitches for the first 2 rows of the button band. But anyway, I could fit those little buttons right through the crochet stitches, so I didn't actually even have to make buttonholes. I could just fit them through the stitches, and that worked really well. I also eliminated a collar. So the original pattern calls for you to add on a little scalloped collar to the cardigan, and I didn't add that in because I liked the way that it looked as it was. For the bonnet, I had to do some finagling. This pattern, is free on the hobby website, the cardigan pattern. For that, in some of the pictures for this cardigan, it has a matching bonnet, but the shape of that bonnet that went with that cardigan just seemed a little odd to me. I didn't think like it looked like it would fit very well. So instead, I found another free pattern called the Celtic Dream Crochet Baby Bonnet. I don't remember who the designer is for that, and I didn't write it down for some reason, but hopefully I'll have it here on the screen. I made this in just one day on April 4th. I made the 6 to 12 month size, and I completed rounds 1 through 7 to start this crochet bonnet. I used a 5 millimeter hook. So after rounds 1 through 7, then I added in 11 rows of the same stitch pattern from the Portobello cardigan so that I could have that matching stitch, which I just loved so much, the looks of that matching, that stitch that was on the yoke of the cardigan, and I wanted to add that into the bonnet so it would be a cute set. And then I just did 40 chain stitches for the ties for the front of the bonnet. Also in the bonnet, I think that it called for, well, I just adjusted it a lot because I really just followed the first 7 rounds of that bonnet, and then I just kind of did my own thing, adding in the stitch pattern. I think I made mine a little bit longer than what that pattern called for the depth of the bonnet, but it ended up fitting her so perfectly. Oh, it's so cute on her. I don't have a picture of her in it. And I don't think I wouldn't want to share that on here anyway, because I want to keep her private. But anyway, the bonnet fit her so perfectly, and I was nervous that it wouldn't fit well, but it fit so well. So I was so pleased with that, and yeah, they were really happy with that gift. So I was glad to make that. I would definitely want to keep this set in mind to make again, because it was so fast and easy and adorable, I think. So I highly recommend those. Well, especially the cardigan. The bonnet, I was kind of doing my own thing a lot on. So, and then I forgot to mention about how the knitting class went. So as I mentioned in my last episode, I had the opportunity to teach a few girls in my daughter's American Heritage Girls group how to knit, and that went so well. I had never taught a class how to knit before, and I showed on my last episode that I had started a bunch of hats for them to start working on, and they all caught on really quickly. A few of them had knitted in the past, like my daughter, for example. I taught her how to knit when she was probably 6, but she just never has really gotten into it much. But she, I grabbed her hat that was out in the living room because she has been working on it a little bit. So here is her hat. that she's working on. She's only put about an inch of work into this, but it's not bad. I did see that she had a dropped stitch, so I'll have to help her fix that. But it's not terrible. She's doing a good job, I think. So that's great. And all of the girls really had such a nice time. They really enjoyed it and it went well. So I was so pleased with that. I think that having a project already started for them and then they could just go around and around, you know, knitting the project and not having to worry about learning how to cast on first thing, because that is such a struggle for a lot of people to learn how to cast on. But they can get the hang of just knitting, get a finished product, hopefully. And if they're interested in it, then they can go back and learn how to cast on, how to bind off, because I just showed them how to cut a long tail and weave the long tail through the end of the top of the hat once they get it to be 10 inches in length. So that's they don't have to actually bind off the stitches. So anyway, that went really well. And I just wanted to give an update for that. I wanted to let you guys know how that went. So anyway, it was super successful and everybody enjoyed their, you know, learning how to knit. So that was great. So now that is all I have to share. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.